I didn't know why the palace fell silent. Until the alien queen's daughter hugged the human man, the palace was never quiet. It was built to ensure that silence could never exist inside it. The galactic conquered palace was a living structure, grown from crystal-laced stone and humming alloys that resonated with thought, sound, and emotion. Even when no one spoke aloud, the air vibrated with layered communication, telepathic murmurs, harmonic signals, translated whispers, and ceremonial tones from 100 species who did not know how to be still. That was why the silence felt wrong. It arrived without warning, like a breath held too long. One moment the grand hall pulsed with motion and noise. Delegates floated, walked, slithered, or hovered in assigned zones. Energy banners displayed shifting symbols of alliance and threat. Security constructs glided along invisible paths. At the center dais, the alien queen sat upon her living throne, her presence alone bending the mental space around her. Then everything stopped. The sound vanished first, not cut, not muted, absorbed. Conversations died mid-thought. Telepathic links collapsed into stunned quiet. Even the palace itself seemed to hold its breath. No alarms sounded, no weapons activated. Instead, every being in the hall felt the same thing at once. Shock. Elia's ward stood near the outer edge of the central floor, exactly where a human advisor was expected to stand. Visible, but not important. He wore a simple dark uniform with no rank marks, no weapons, and no decorative insignia. His hands were clasped loosely in front of him, posture relaxed in a way that confused most non-humans. Humans were small, soft, loud when nervous, quiet when afraid. They were not supposed to draw attention in rooms like this. Elias felt the silence settle over him like pressure in deep water. He did not move. Years of working with species who communicated through emotion rather than words had taught him one thing very well. When the universe goes quiet, wait. Across the hall, the alien queen's daughter stepped forward. She was smaller than the queen, but still larger than most beings present. Her form was elegant and alien, her skin shimmering with faint bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her emotional state. Delicate neural crests rose from her head, usually glowing with restrained psychic energy. Now those crests flickered unevenly. Palace security reacted instantly and then froze. Guards tensed. Weapons powered halfway to activation. Defensive fields flickered into readiness and then stalled, locked by ancient protocol. No one could interfere without the Queen's direct command, and the Queen said nothing. Her eyes followed her daughter as the young royal left the safety of the inner circle and walked toward the human. A murmur should have rippled through the hall. Instead, the silence deepened. Elias noticed her approach only because the pressure in the air changed. He turned slowly, careful not to startle her. His heart rate increased, but his face remained calm. He recognized the signs immediately, the uneven glow, the slight tremor in her steps, the way her attention seemed both focused and scattered. She was overwhelmed. He had seen it before. The princess stopped a few steps away from him. They looked at each other. From the outside, it must have looked absurd. The heir to one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, standing before a human civilian with no status, no authority, and no psychic defenses. Inside the shared silence, something else moved. The princess tilted her head slightly, a gesture she had copied from Elias during their sessions. Her mental presence brushed against his, not invasive, not commanding, just reaching. Most species would have recoiled. Elias did not. He let his breathing slow and opened his awareness just enough to acknowledge her. He did not project thoughts. He did not shield. He simply stayed present. "It's okay," he said softly aloud, knowing she might not hear the words but would feel the intent. The sound of his voice did not break the silence. It wasn't meant to. Her glow steadied a little. Behind them, the galactic conquered watched in disbelief. Many of them knew the Queen's daughter by reputation alone. She was said to carry psychic strength that rivaled entire councils. She was also rumored to be unstable, dangerous, prone to episodes that left entire rooms mentally scarred. That was why she was rarely seen. That was why no one approached her. That was why seeing her walk freely toward a human made no sense at all. Elias shifted his stance slightly, turning his body so he was not blocking her path. He kept his hands visible, relaxed. No sudden movements, no assumptions. She took the final step forward. The silence pressed harder. Then the princess wrapped her arms around him. Gasps should have echoed. Instead, the palace went completely still. The contact was gentle but firm. Her forehead rested against his shoulder. Her bioluminescence flared once, bright, chaotic, then softened into a steady, warm glow that spread through the hall like a slow sunrise. Elias froze for half a second, pure instinct screaming that touching royal alien entities was forbidden by 100 laws. Then training overruled fear. He raised one arm and rested it lightly against her back, not gripping, not restraining, just present. Her mental field surged outward, not a psychic attack, not a command, emotion, relief. It hit the hall like a wave. Telepathic species staggered as foreign feelings flooded their awareness. Non-telepathic beings felt it as pressure in their chests, a sudden weight behind the eyes, a tightening of breath. This was not power as the galaxy understood it. This was vulnerability. The queen stood slowly. Her throne responded, folding and shifting as she rose to her full height. Every instinct in the hall screamed that this was the moment of judgment, punishment, correction. But the queen did not look angry. She looked stunned. Through the shared mental space, she felt her daughter's state clearly for the first time in years. Not fragmented, not fractured by uncontrolled psychic noise. Centered, safe, because of a human. Elias felt the princess relax fully against him, her breathing slowed. The chaotic flicker of her crests dimmed into calm patterns he recognized well. "You're not alone," he murmured, quietly enough that only she could hear. "You never were." Her grip tightened for a moment, then eased. The silence began to crack, not with sound, but with understanding. Delegates started to realize what they were feeling was not an attack or a display of dominance. It was the echo of something deeply personal being shared without force. The palace system slowly reactivated. Ambient hum returned, low and uncertain, like a cautious breath after near drowning. The princess pulled back slightly but did not step away. One hand remained on Elias' arm, grounding herself. She looked up at him, eyes bright but steady. "Thank you," she said, aloud this time. Her voice was soft, young, and very real. Elias nodded once. "Anytime," the queen finally spoke. Her voice carried without amplification, resonating through air and mind alike. "Let the record show," she said, eyes never leaving her daughter, "that no law was broken here today." A ripple of stunned reaction moved through the hall. The queen stepped forward. She stopped a respectful distance from Elias and inclined her head, not a bow, but an acknowledgement. "My daughter was in distress," the queen continued. "And this human recognized it when my empire did not." No one spoke, no one dared. "The silence you felt," the queen said, "was not fear." Her gaze swept across the gathered species. It was the sound of power learning something new. The princess released Elias' arm and moved to stand beside her mother, calmer than anyone had seen her in cycles. Elias stepped back to his original position, heart still pounding, mind strangely quiet. The palace slowly returned to life. But nothing felt the same anymore. The palace did not return to normal after that day. It pretended to, but anyone sensitive enough could feel the difference. Conversations resumed, protocols continued, and alliances were discussed as always, yet something unseen lingered in the air. The memory of the silence stayed with everyone who had been present, like an echo that refused to fade. Elias Ward felt it too. He walked through the long corridor assigned to visiting human staff, his steps steady but his thoughts restless. He had been escorted out of the grand hall with polite formality, though the guards' attention lingered on him longer than before. No one spoke to him. No one accused him. That silence was more unsettling than punishment. He was not afraid of consequences. He was worried about the princess. She had been calm when she stepped away from him, calmer than she had ever been during their private sessions. That alone should have made him feel relieved. Instead, it filled him with concern. Sudden peace could be fragile, especially for someone who had lived in constant mental noise. Elias entered his assigned quarters, a simple room with smooth walls that adjusted temperature and light automatically. He sat down slowly and let out a long breath he had not realized he was holding. He had not planned the hug. He had never asked for permission. But when she reached for him, there had been no choice at all. Across the palace, in chambers grown from living crystal and ancient design, the alien queen stood with her daughter. The room was shielded against intrusion, both physical and mental. Here, no council could listen. No delegate could judge. The princess sat on a low platform near the window, gazing out at the stars beyond the palace barrier. Her bioluminescent patterns moved gently now, slow and even like a quiet tide. The queen watched her closely. For cycles, the queen said at last, your mind has burned like an uncontained star. Why did it quiet today? The princess did not turn, because he did not try to control it. The queen frowned slightly. Many have tried to help you. They tried to fix me, the princess replied. They pushed, they blocked, they commanded. She looked down at her hands. He listened. The queen felt something tighten inside her chest. That sensation was unfamiliar and unwelcome. Her empire was built on mastery of mind and force of will. Listening was not a tool of power. Humans have no psychic defense, the queen said. No projection, no dominance. That should make them vulnerable. It makes them quiet, the princess answered. She turned to face her mother. Her eyes were steady, clear in a way they had not been since childhood. When I am near him, she said, the noise does not grow louder, it settles. The queen said nothing for a long moment. In another wing of the palace, the Galactic Concord Council gathered in emergency session. Representatives argued in low voices, some speaking aloud, others through contained mental channels. This changes nothing, one delegate insisted. It was an emotional display, nothing more. You felt it, another replied. Do not pretend you did not. Several species had withdrawn entirely from the discussion, still shaken by the emotional wave that had passed through them. For those who lived in constant psychic connection, the experience had been deeply unsettling. A human observer sat quietly at the far end of the chamber, recording proceedings. He did not speak unless addressed. Humans had learned long ago that patience was often mistaken for weakness. Elias was summoned later that cycle. 2 palace guards arrived at his quarters, their movements formal but not aggressive. They escorted him through halls he had never been permitted to enter before, deeper into the structure where the walls glowed faintly with ancient energy. He felt exposed, not afraid, exposed. They stopped before a doorway that opened without a sound. Inside, the queen waited. The chamber was vast but not intimidating in the way the throne hall was. This space felt personal. The queen stood alone, her posture regal but relaxed. You may approach, she said. Elias did so, stopping at a respectful distance. He kept his hands visible, his breathing steady. You understand, the queen began, that what occurred today disrupted centuries of protocol. Yes, Elias said simply, and yet, she continued, you do not appear remorseful. I would do it again, Elias replied, then paused. With permission, if possible. The queen studied him carefully. She extended her awareness, brushing lightly against his mind. She found no shields, no hidden aggression, only a quiet presence shaped by experience with fear, loss, and endurance. It unsettled her. You are not afraid of me, she observed. I am, Elias said honestly, but fear doesn't mean I stop caring. That answer struck deeper than she expected. My daughter trusts you, the queen said. That is not a small thing. I know, Elias replied. I won't break it. Silence stretched between them, but it was different from before, not heavy, not forced. The queen finally inclined her head again, this time lower. You will continue your sessions, she said, under my authority. Elias felt tension leave his shoulders. Thank you. There is more, the queen added. You will also observe, teach us what you do. Elias hesitated. I don't teach techniques, I don't use methods. Then what do you do? The queen asked. I stay, he said. The queen considered that. Across the following cycles, Elias' presence became a quiet constant. He met with the princess regularly, sometimes speaking, often not. They would sit together in rooms shielded from psychic noise, or walk through gardens grown to respond gently to emotional states. He never forced conversation. He never demanded progress. When the princess struggled, he did not correct her. He grounded himself and let her find her own center. Other observers watched from a distance, scientists, advisors, healers from a dozen species. They struggled to record what they could not measure. There were no energy spikes, no measurable psychic interference. Just calm, slowly word spread. Other species began requesting human specialists, not warriors, not diplomats, listeners. The conquered resisted at first. Empires built on dominance did not welcome the idea that strength could exist without control. But results could not be ignored. Conflicts de-escalated faster when humans were present. Negotiations stabilized. Volatile minds quieted. Humanity had not announced this role. It had been given to them. Elias noticed the change before he understood it. He began receiving messages from human command, careful inquiries wrapped in neutral language. What exactly are you doing? His answer never changed. Nothing special. One evening, as artificial starlight dimmed, the princess sat beside him, watching distant ships move like slow fireflies beyond the palace barrier. "They are afraid of you," she said suddenly. Elias smiled faintly. "They shouldn't be." "They are not afraid of your strength," she corrected. "They are afraid of what you change without trying." Elias looked at her thoughtful. "Change isn't always bad." "It is," she said softly, "to those who built their lives on things staying the same." She leaned slightly closer, not touching this time, but near enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence. "When you held me," she said, "the noise stopped." Elias nodded. "Sometimes people just need to know they're allowed to be quiet." She considered that, then smiled. The galaxy was beginning to learn the same lesson. The change did not come with an announcement. It came quietly, the way most human things did. At first, it was only a feeling, a sense of balance that followed Elias' ward as he moved through the palace. Rooms felt calmer when he entered them. Conversations slowed. Minds that usually pressed outward with dominance softened without effort. This disturbed many. Power in the galaxy had always been loud. It demanded attention. It bent others to its shape. What Elias carried did none of that, and that made it dangerous in a way fleets were not. The alien queen was aware of the tension growing beneath the calm. Reports reached her daily, delegates requesting human presence, advisors questioning doctrine, military minds unsettled by emotional stability they could not counter or command. And at the center of it all was one human who kept insisting he was doing nothing. The queen observed another session between Elias and her daughter from behind a psychic veil, not to intrude but to understand. They sat in a garden chamber where bioluminescent plants responded to emotional states. The light was soft, steady, no sharp colors, no sudden flares. The princess was speaking quietly. "I used to feel like my thoughts were tearing me apart," she said, "like too many voices screaming at once." Elias listened. He did not interrupt. He did not guide. "They told me I was powerful," she continued, "but power felt like pain." She looked at her hands, which glowed faintly. "You never called it power." Elias shrugged slightly. "Because it's just part of you, like breathing. Power shouldn't hurt." The queen felt something shift inside herself at those words. The princess exhaled slowly. "When I am with others, I still feel it sometimes, but now I know it can stop." Elias nodded. "Knowing that matters." From her hidden position, the queen realized something unsettling. Her daughter was not dependent on the human. She was learning independence because of him. That frightened the Empire more than any sign of weakness ever could. Not everyone in the palace accepted this change. A faction within the conquered, made up mostly of species who relied on psychic dominance, began to push back. They argued that humans were destabilizing established power balances. That emotional influence without regulation was a form of manipulation. They demanded limits. They demanded oversight. They demanded Elias be removed. The request came formally, wrapped in language of safety and protocol. The queen summoned Elias again. This time the room held others, advisors, military representatives, observers from 3 major empires. The air was tense. "You are accused," one delegate began, "of influencing minds without consent." Elias blinked. "I don't influence anyone." "That is precisely the concern," another replied. "You do not try, yet effect occurs." Elias looked to the queen. "May I speak freely?" She inclined her head. "I don't project thoughts," Elias said. "I don't send feelings, I don't block anything. I just exist the way humans evolved to exist." "That is not an answer," the delegate snapped. "It is," Elias said calmly. "You just don't like it." A ripple of restrained reaction moved through the room. "You believe yourself harmless," the delegate continued. "I believe myself responsible," Elias replied, "which is why I never force contact, I never demand trust, I never stay where I'm not wanted." The queen raised a hand, silencing the room. "You fear loss of control," she said, "but control has already failed where my daughter is concerned." Silence followed, thick and heavy. "The human does not weaken minds," the queen continued. "He stabilizes them." One advisor spoke carefully. "And if others learn to do the same?" The queen's eyes hardened slightly. "Then perhaps our definition of strength was incomplete." The faction withdrew, dissatisfied but unable to challenge her authority openly. That night the palace experienced another silence. Not as sudden as the first, not as overwhelming. It spread slowly like a deep exhale moving through shared space. Elias felt it while walking alone through a transit corridor. He stopped, sensing the shift immediately. Somewhere nearby, a young delegate from a telepathic species had lost control of their emotional field. Fear spiked, uncontrolled and sharp, threatening to cascade. Security would normally respond with suppression fields. Elias turned instead. He found the delegate crouched against the wall, trembling, mental output spiking wildly. Elias did not approach too quickly. He sat down several steps away, making himself smaller, non-threatening. "You don't have to explain," he said softly. "I'm just here." The delegate's mental noise crashed against him like a storm. Elias breathed, slow, steady. He anchored himself the way humans always had, in the body, in the present, in the knowledge that storms passed. Gradually, the pressure eased. The delegate looked up, shocked. "What did you do?" "Nothing," Elias replied. That answer would echo through reports, discussions, and quiet conversations for cycles. Humans were not immune to fear. They were practiced in surviving it. As more incidents like this occurred, a pattern became impossible to deny. Humans did not amplify emotional chaos. They absorbed it, grounded it, and let it dissolve. The galaxy had evolved power. Humanity had evolved resilience. The princess noticed the strain building around Elias before he did. "They are pulling at you," she said one evening as they walked. "From many directions." "I can handle it," Elias replied. "I know," she said. "That is why they will not stop." She slowed, then spoke carefully. "If they force you to leave," Elias met her gaze, "you'll still have what you learned." She nodded, but the thought clearly troubled her. The queen watched this exchange from afar and made a decision that would ripple outward for generations. She called an open session of the Galactic Concord, not behind closed doors. Not filtered, every species present. Elias stood where he always did, unarmed, unimportant by traditional standards. The queen stepped forward. "Today," she announced, "you will witness what humanity is." She gestured, and the princess moved to Elias' side. There was no hug this time, no dramatic gesture, just proximity. The palace waited. Nothing happened, no surge, no silence, just calm. "This," the queen said, "is the absence of force." She turned her gaze upon the assembly. "You fear humans because they do not rule minds," she said. "They endure them." She paused. "My daughter is not powerful because of her mind," she continued. "She is powerful because she learned peace from someone who did not demand obedience." The princess reached out and took Elias' hand. Not for grounding, not for rescue, but in choice. The galaxy felt it, not as a wave, as a truth settling into place. And for the first time, humanity was no longer seen as weak. It was seen as something far more unsettling. The days after the open session felt heavier than before. Not because of fear, but because understanding had begun to spread, and understanding always brought change. The palace still stood tall and bright, its halls still full of motion, yet something invisible had shifted in its foundation. Elias Ward felt it each time he walked. Eyes followed him now, not with suspicion alone, but with curiosity. Some carried respect. Others carried concern. A few carried quiet fear. He did not change his routine. Each morning he met with the princess if she wished. Some days they spoke. Some days they sat in silence, watching light move across the walls. Other days she practiced entering crowded spaces without losing herself, while Elias stayed nearby, not guiding, not shielding, just present. And every time she grew steadier. The queen watched her daughter carefully. She noticed how the young royal now paused before reacting, how her emotional waves no longer spilled outward without control. For the first time, the queen allowed herself to imagine a future where her daughter ruled not through fear, but through balance. That thought terrified many within the empire. The military council met in private chambers, their voices low but sharp. "If this continues," one commander said, "our psychic superiority will lose meaning." "Superiority based on fear is already fragile," another replied. "You speak like a human," the first snapped. The argument went nowhere, but unease remained. Beyond the palace, word traveled fast. Other systems requested human observers. Some asked for mediators. A few quietly asked for help with internal conflicts that no amount of force had solved. Humanity had never intended to take this role, but it accepted responsibility once it was given. Elias received a message from human command, simple and direct. "You are becoming a symbol." "Be careful," he read it once and closed the display. Symbols were dangerous things. They stopped being human very quickly. That evening, Elias stood on a viewing platform overlooking the stars. The princess joined him, her presence calm and bright. They speak of you as if you are an idea, she said. He smiled faintly. That's usually when things go wrong. Does it bother you? She asked. Being misunderstood always does, he replied. But I can live with it. She studied him. You never tried to be important. Most humans don't, Elias said. We just try to get through the day without hurting anyone too badly. She laughed softly, a sound that once would have rippled dangerously through the minds around her. Now it stayed gentle, contained. A new challenge arrived sooner than expected. A high-ranking delegate from a dominant psychic species collapsed during a negotiation session. Their emotional output spiked violently, threatening to overwhelm everyone in the chamber. Security systems prepared to isolate the area. Elias was already there. He felt the surge hit him like a sudden storm. His breath caught, but he did not step back. He moved slowly, deliberately, lowering himself to sit a short distance from the delegate. He said nothing. He focused on the feel of the floor beneath him, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the weight of his own body in space. He did what humans had always done when facing chaos they could not control. He endured it. The delegate's mental storm raged, then faltered, then slowly began to settle. The chamber's tension eased with it. When it was over, the delegate stared at Elias in disbelief. "You did not shield," they said. "You did not command." Elias nodded. "I didn't need to." That moment spread faster than any official report. Soon, it was no longer just Elias. Other humans were invited into similar situations. They did not all succeed. Some struggled. Some learned, but even imperfect presence proved valuable. The galaxy began to understand something fundamental. Humans did not remove pain. They made space for it to pass. The Queen called Elias to her chambers again, this time without advisors. "You are changing the balance of power," she said plainly. "I never meant to," Elias replied. "I know," the Queen said. "That is why it works." She studied him with eyes that had commanded fleets and shattered worlds. "What will humanity ask in return?" Elias was quiet for a long moment. "Nothing," he said. "We don't want to rule. We don't want to dominate. We just want to exist without being crushed by everyone else's expectations." The Queen considered this carefully. "You realize," she said, "that others will try to use your kind." "They already do," Elias replied. "We just decide how much of ourselves we give." The Queen inclined her head. "Then hear my decision." She rose, her presence filling the chamber. "Humanity will be recognized as a stabilizing species," she declared, "protected by conquered law. Neutral in conflicts unless they choose otherwise." Elias felt a weight settle on him. "That's a lot to place on us." "It is," the Queen agreed, "but you have already carried it without complaint." Not all accepted the decision peacefully. A coalition of dominant species challenged the ruling, accusing the Queen of emotional compromise. They argued that allowing humans such influence endangered the galaxy. The challenge escalated toward conflict. Fleets mobilized. Lines were drawn. And once again, humanity did something unexpected. They did not prepare weapons. They sent people. Human envoys traveled with no escort fleets, no psychic shields, no threats. They arrived, listened, stayed, and refused to be provoked. They sat in rooms full of anger and did not add to it. They absorbed blame, fear, and rage and answered with calm honesty. Progress was slow, but it was real. Elias watched these events unfold with a mix of pride and concern. He saw humans stretched thin, carrying burdens they never asked for. He also saw something else. They were not breaking. The princess stood beside him during a quiet moment in the palace gardens. "They are learning," she said. "Yes," Elias replied, "but learning hurts." She looked thoughtful. "You once told me pain passes if you let it." He nodded. "It does." "What if the galaxy refuses to let go?" she asked. Elias smiled gently. "Then we keep breathing until it does." She reached for his hand, not because she needed grounding, but because she wanted connection. He allowed it. The Queen watched them from a distance and felt something unfamiliar but welcome. Hope. The galaxy was not healed, not yet. But for the first time in its long history, it had learned that power did not have to be loud, fear did not have to rule, and strength could look like a single human sitting quietly in a storm and choosing not to run. The galaxy did not change all at once. It changed the way mountains do, slowly, under constant pressure, until one day the shape was no longer the same. The palace was quieter now, not because sound was missing, but because no one felt the need to fill every space with dominance. Delegates spoke more carefully. Minds reached outward less aggressively. Even the palace itself seemed to hum at a lower, steadier rhythm. Ilya's ward noticed the difference most when he was no longer noticed. He still walked the same halls, still wore the same simple uniform, still stood in the same places during meetings, but the tension that once followed him had faded. He was no longer an anomaly. He was part of the balance. The princess had changed too. She moved through the palace without escort now, her presence calm and controlled. Her psychic field no longer surged without warning. When she spoke, others listened, not because they feared her, but because her words carried weight without force. One morning, she stood beside her mother at the high balcony overlooking the conquered hall. Below them, representatives from dozens of species gathered for what would be recorded as one of the most important sessions in galactic history. The queen felt the moment settle. "For generations," she began, her voice carrying easily, "we believed strength meant control. We believed silence meant submission. We were wrong." A ripple moved through the hall, not resistance, but attention. "We built empires that could shatter minds," she continued, "yet we failed to protect those closest to us." Her gaze briefly touched her daughter, then shifted to Ilya's, standing quietly among the observers. "It was a human," the queen said, "who showed us that stability is not created by force, but by presence." No one interrupted. "From this day," she declared, "humanity's role is recognized not as lesser, but as essential." The conquered formalized it moments later. The words were precise, legal, careful, but the meaning was clear. Humans were anchors, not rulers, not weapons, anchors. Across the galaxy, responses varied. Some worlds welcomed the change. Others resisted it bitterly. A few tried to test it, pushing boundaries, provoking reactions. Humans did not respond with anger. They responded with limits. They stayed where they were welcome. They left where they were not. That, more than anything, forced others to look inward. Ilias received his final assignment notice weeks later. His role at the palace was officially complete. Others had been trained. Others could listen now. Not perfectly, but well enough. He read the message twice, then closed it. That evening he stood once more at the viewing platform. The stars beyond the barrier felt closer than they once had. The princess joined him, as she often did. "You are leaving," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," Ilias replied. She was quiet for a long time. Her light dimmed slightly, then steadied again. "I won't lose what you gave me," she said finally. Ilias smiled. "I didn't give you anything. You already had it." "You stayed," she said, "when no one else could." "That's just being human," he replied. She turned to face him fully. "Then I hope the galaxy never forgets what that means." The queen approached them, her presence calm but unmistakable. "You will always have sanctuary here," she said to Ilias. "Thank you," he replied. "But it's time I went home," she nodded. "The galaxy will still feel you even in your absence." Ilias shook his head gently. "It shouldn't need me." "That," the queen said, "is why it trusted you." The farewell was simple, no ceremony, no display, just acknowledgement. When Ilias boarded the human transport vessel, there were no cheers, no honors, just quiet respect from those who understood what had happened. As the ship pulled away from the palace, the princess watched until it vanished into the light of the stars. The palace did not fall silent, it breathed. Years later, stories would be told across the galaxy. They would change with time, as stories always did. Some would exaggerate, some would misunderstand. But one truth remained constant. The palace fell silent once because an alien child hugged a human man. Not because he was powerful, not because he was important, but because, in a universe that only understood force, he chose to stay calm, to listen, and to care.